Good morning. Welcome to Harriet's Papery today. Today we're going to do a project that somebody asked me about a while back, and that is how I bind my journals. So I'm going to do the binding on my sister-in-law's journal today, and I'm going to show you guys how I do it. Now, since the other day I had a little unfortunate incident, I have put down masking tape all around. So if you see little bits of white on the edge, that's just the masking tape to mark out what is in frame and what's not. Because once this is done, it can't be redone. So we want to get it the first time. So anyway, I have two signatures here for the journal. And I have my book cover. So I measured this to see what size, and you'll see this fits in there pretty good. It doesn't have to be the full length, but it does have to be long enough to get all your holes. This is my binding template that I made at some point along the way. And so I just want to be able to center my holes on the length there. But I punched holes, marked out holes on this, and you can probably see some other spots there where I decided it wasn't right. Anyway, I punched it in there with this tool I have. It's actually a jewelry tool and not designed to punch paper, but it will punch thick paper. This is cardstock, and I made this with tag board, and I put together 2 layers. If you don't have that and you're using cardstock or like some of those cards that come in the mail, you could use those too, but I would put more than 2 layers. I'd put 3 layers just because that stuff's not as stiff. So to do this, I'm going to mark off the holes, and I'm going to put them in with this awl. My husband and I use this for leather work and all kinds of things, but it's what I punch the holes in for my bindings. And then the binding template, I just put it in here. It's the same length as my pages. And I use paper clips, or I use these quilting clips to clip it in place, just kind of depending on what I feel like that day or what seems like it's going to work best. Anyway, so we'll get started on this bit here. So generally what I do to mark where the holes are going to go is I just kind of eyeball it. Like, I look and see where I think it will give the pages plenty of room to come together, because you don't want it too close together, but you don't want them so far apart they won't let the front and the back of the journal close either. So, and I'll just mark them with pencil. This is all going to get covered with a strip of muslin before we, see, eyeballing is not always the best. Alright, since the eyeballing didn't work, I went and grabbed an eraser, and we are gonna do this a little differently. So I'm gonna go in a 1/4 inch and just make a little bit of a line. See if we can pick that up through. I might just have to line it up here. Okay. Mark our holes. Alright, we're going to do the same on the other side. Maybe we'll go in a little bit further. There. Alright. And the tricky part here is getting lined up with the other one. So I think I'm going to mark right there so I can see where we need to be lined up to. This can be a bit of a slow process, especially the first few times you do it. Okay, there we go. Sometimes I have a little hole punching device that I use, and it's really for punching holes like in metal. And sometimes I use that on these, but today I'm going to use the awl so you guys can see how to do this with an awl. I'm sure a lot of you have them. If not, you might be able to find a hole punch that punches pretty small holes. I know that I see them like in Hobby Lobby a lot. I'm not sure I've seen them at Joann's. And I think if you have a Crop-A-Dile, it has smaller size holes that you can punch. So you see, it's not actually too hard. See, my holes are a little bit off. But I think junk journals are not totally about perfection. Okay, we've got those done. So we'll set some things out of the way here, and I'll see if I've got muslin. All right, here's my muslin. It's extra wide, which is what I want, because when I set it in my book here, I want the muslin to go over the edge a little, and then whatever I'm going to put in here will probably go underneath it. I'll probably put paper in there, but you can put fabric in, whatever you choose to do with that. Anyway, I want this to go over on each end, because you can always trim off extra, but if you don't have enough, you can't fix that. So I give it a little slice there, and I rip it. And then I snip the threads. And then I'm going to glue it on there. Let's see. Got so much stuff here on my little workspace. So then I just glue all this so we can get the muslin glued down really well. And I'm just using Fabri-Tac on this. All right. And we'll leave that on there. All right, now we're going to set that aside to dry. Okay, so we're going to use the binding template again. We're going to clip it in here. I think I'll use paper clips today. And when I clip this in, I use 4 clips to really keep it in place. On the signatures, you might see here, I have one here and one here. So I don't feel like I need more. You use as many as you need to, to feel confident that it's not going to shift on you. And we start to poke little holes. This can be harder depending on the thickness of your paper. I have some thicker pages in here and some just plain copy paper, vintage papers. So some of those 30-pound papers are a little bit, and 26-pound papers are a little bit thicker and harder to punch through, but still, as you can see, goes pretty good. All right, so then we remove the template, but don't take your other paper clips off. You're going to leave those on there till you're done sewing it in. And I learned how to do this right here on YouTube. I don't remember now, it's been so long. But I saw someone do this, and then somewhere along the line I saw somebody who had made themselves a template. And so I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. Not everybody likes to do that. Some people like to just punch 2 holes in and go, and that's fine if that's what you like. And also, when you use the awl, be very careful. That is sharp, and if your finger's in the wrong spot, you could stab yourself and have a trip to the ER, and nobody wants that. So be very careful with all these sharp implements that you use. I had to go to my doctor's office and have a sewing machine needle removed from my finger last year. That was super extra fun. It is so funny how you can be in a doctor's office with the darndest thing and nobody even notices. Like, nobody in that waiting room noticed that I had a needle sticking out of my finger. And the worst part of the whole thing, it was strangely relatively painless. The worst part was the tetanus shot. That was so painful. So painful. Okay, now I've got some hot tips here for sewing these in, and one of them is make sure you sew them in the right order and the right direction. Like if you put the front one in the wrong spot, or if you put one of them in upside down, you're going to have to redo it. Or be willing to live with the result. If you're willing to live with the result, that's fine. I like to poke these holes in before I get started. It makes it, I think, a little easier to find the holes. I mean, they're not great big giant holes, but they're easier to see. And I don't know if you can see it on this, but I can kind of see where the hole is through. I can see light through the muslin. And as far as this, I don't think there's, for me anyway, there's not necessarily a top or a bottom, because I tried to place my holes sort of so it's centered, so there's as much room up here as there is down here. Well, it looks like this one might have a little bit different, but it'll be okay. The main thing is making sure your holes align right this way. So if this one was a little bit more off, you know, like, I don't know, it might be troublesome. But as long as you're making sure your holes line up, that's fine. Now, one thing is, you can have the ends of your strings in the middle of your signature. Or, in the case of one like this, you can have the ends back here, and just when you go to make your journal, or put it together, I guess is what I mean, those ends will be hidden in there. So it's kind of up to you. I'm going to leave mine in here because you can attach little things to those ends if they're in here. But if they're inside the binding, you can't do that. So I'm going to start, and I like to start here in the middle. Oh, and my binding string is just cotton crochet thread. You can buy it lots of places. So I'm going to leave a little extra long string there so I can put some charms on it. And you want to find the right hole here. And just start pulling your thread through. And at first it's probably not all going to be super tight. You want to have plenty of thread on the inside, even if you're not going to put danglies on it. Leave plenty because it's going to pull back and forth some. And when your thread's really long, it's going to catch everything, so probably need to move some things. I was dragging my glue. I don't think we need that. Okay, this can be a bit tricky, especially after you get more attached to the... See, I've already pulled most of my thread through. Wow. Okay. Trying to find my hole here. Oh, good grief. Lost my hole. It's actually much easier if you aren't trying to film it. So if you've never done this, don't be intimidated by what looks like it's really hard here, because it's usually not hard at all. Okay, so we'll pull some of that. Let's see, and I try to hold that there. That way it can't pull all the way through, and it can kind of tighten up. Oh wow, I've never had that happen before. I'm going to carefully snip that so you don't cut your string. First time for everything, friends. First time for everything. Alright, so next, I'm sure there's a name for what we're doing here besides making a mess and knots and... Oh really? Oh really? Okay, we're going to pause this. Alright, we're back. To make sure we were actually back to filming. Okay. So we pull that back through there. And then we'll come to the next hole. All right, we had a little problem there, but we're all ready to go again. So we're going through this hole, and there we go. So we'll pull this through. Kind of want to watch so you don't get any tangles when you have a lot of thread. I actually have way more thread here than I need. I wanted to make sure I had everything as much as I needed. All right, I went through that hole. Now we're going to go through this one. Uh-oh, there we go. And through the back. I don't know if you saw that, but it tightened right up. So we're going to go through the bottom hole and right, trying to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing here. Anyway, Sometimes you kind of have to feel around going through there because papers get a little bit weird, bent, or I don't know. And it probably has to do with what goes on when you poke the holes in. And it gets worse if your papers come apart, like if you don't have them clipped together. That's not fun. All right. When you come back through it, usually lined up pretty good by then. So we go back down through and see how we're sewing that down. Oops. Well, that one's not as lined up as it needs to be. There we go. And hey, here we are. Now I've got string to hang some danglies down there. I'll pull it a little bit more. Okay, so now we want to tighten everything up. So you want to check and make sure everything's good and tight. And then you tie a knot. If you're really worried about it coming apart, I suppose you can put some glue in it. I never do. All right. And then just